Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on the part of the world where you are now. Let's get started. There is not much to say to introduce Orjan, because everybody interested in the snow leopards does know him very well. So we know that he has led the most successful study on snow leopards ever. His study area was in Mongolia, and which is very good. He is also good at writing papers. So he has generated the flow of very stimulating papers on these little known species, because there have not been so many facts, hard facts about the biology of snow leopards, because it's a very difficult species to work on, especially if you work in the field, in the mountains. He will speak today on a topic which is parental cares and when and how cubs disperse. And this topic is I don't know whether to say loosely related to conservation. Maybe it's very much related to conservation, because dispersal is the key to understand the recolonization of areas where the snow leopard was wiped out in the past. In my former study area in Sagarmatha National Park in Nepal, it took some 30 years before a pair of snow leopards started breeding again there. They were wiped out by humans in the 60s, and males, in some cases we know that they were males, in some others presumably they were males because they had no cubs at the hill, visited the park, but they never stopped long enough to allow reproduction with the female, because females were not there. Apparently, in cats, females disperse much less than males, and this is very bad for conservation, because it let's say take a lot of time before a breeding pair can form in a new area. There is just one small snag in Orjan papers, which is a small sample size, just 2 female cubs and 1 male cub. But of course, we are not talking about white rats in a lab. We are talking about snow leopards, and both the adults and the cubs have to be caught at the right time, so that satellite radio collars can be put on them. So they are very unique data, and I think he has come up with very stimulating findings. He is not new, he and his co-authors is not new to provide stimulating papers, because I keep mentioning about the ecosphere paper he published together with Gustav and Charu and some other collaborators in 2 years ago. And I would suggest that he will come back sometime in the future and tell everybody about that paper. It's not a very new one, it's just 2-year-old, but I think it really has material which can change our view of the social organization of large cats, also because it's relevant not only to snow leopards, but also to cougars. So now I don't want to take a longer time speaking, and I pass on the mic, so to speak, to Orjan. And if you have questions at the end, he will be happy to answer them. Orjan, please.
Thank you, Sandro. Thank you for that very nice introduction. Just welcome, everyone. I will talk today about a paper that we published about a month ago. And I'm just going to so it shares, right, Sandro?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, so I'll talk about.
Orjan, we can see your shared, like, I think you need to put it on full screen.
Yes, right.
I did, but okay, sorry. I started the share first. That didn't work apparently. Let's see now. I'll do this. Okay, now it works, right? It's the full screen. Yeah, perfect. So yes, we published a paper a month ago or so on how snow leopard cubs separate from their mothers. And this fantastic introduction by Sandro, I should also mention it, of course, a teamwork. So it's the people from the Snow Leopard Conservation Foundation in Mongolia and Snow Leopard Trust. So there's a few authors on this paper, but we're a big team working on the project. And so just as a brief introduction to the concepts. So parental care is any behavior that increase the offspring's survival that the parent do. And so these investments by the parents, the parent have to weigh how much it invests into its current offspring with whatever it can invest into future offsprings. And for a given species, they're bound within certain reproductive parameters. So if you take an elephant, for example, it can't decide to just maintain its calf for 4 or 5 months. Well, the calf would die, and it cannot produce a litter of 5, 6 calves. But in most species, individuals can make adjustments in litter size and how much care they invest in each offspring within boundaries. And the ones who select the most favorable strategy, which is they get most offspring that survive, that strategy will be selected for evolution. And so to optimize this parental investment, the parent will have to weigh the parents must balance how much investments it puts into each offspring. So we'll have to weigh the number of offspring produced in a lifetime with the time and resources it invests in each offspring. So if we take cats, you have a female here, and she can decide if she wants to produce many offspring, she could go for large litters with several cubs in each. Now the problem is if it's too large, then perhaps quite many of them will die because they don't get enough care each cub. So she could instead go for several litters, but only keep them for a short time each litter. Now again, if it's too short time, then several of the cubs will die. And so as an alternative strategy, so here they invest little resources or time in each litter or offspring. And as an alternative, they could go for few offspring, which is either small litters or a very long time between. And they will invest a lot in each litter and cub, and the cubs will have a higher survival rate. So it depends which of these strategies that is the most favorable. And it will depend on outside conditions such as prey density and the habitat in which they occur. Now, for most species, they can mate year-round, but for species with fixed mating seasons, if the female keeps their offspring for a full reproductive cycle, and that could be 1, 2, or 3, 4 full years, that will not reduce her reproductive opportunities because she cannot keeping the offspring for half a year doesn't mean that she can reproduce any faster. She still has to wait for the next mating season. So this is in contrast to species without a fixed mating season, where they can actually reproduce faster by shortening the time they keep their offspring. However, keeping the offspring too long means that she has to invest a lot of energy into them, because the offspring, of course, needs a lot of food, and this could reduce survival of the female, or at least she will be in worse condition by the time she gets the next litter, compared to if she let the litter go and then spend time on her own. And basically, you could say a female, if she needs this much energy per day, then a female with large cubs will need up to 3-4 times that energy. And of course, it requires a lot of investment through hunting and such of the female. So it takes a toll on her to keep the cubs, and she should not do it longer than necessary. Now, if we look at dispersal, so the parental care ends when the offspring separate from the parent and ultimately disperse and settle in a new area. And so the blue here, that's the natal range, or the mother's home range. So dispersal means that the offspring leaves and settles in a new area. Prior to dispersing, the offspring may separate from the mother, but stay in the natal range and remain there independent of the mother. And this is the separation phase. So basically, it'll walk around here, but not disperse. And during the separation phase, the offspring may do exploratory forays or trips outside of the natal range and investigate and try to find somewhere to go. But as long as it returns to the natal range, dispersal has not begun. It's not until it leaves and does not come back that's dispersal. And so for large carnivores in general, I think we can say that the dispersal process is fairly well described if you think of the age when the cubs disperse or how far they walk. It's at least, I say fairly well described, but we have some information there. But the separation phase is poorly described for almost all species, I would say. And it's because to study this, we need to fit both parent and the offspring with some sort of tracking device that allows us to monitor their movements in detail. And currently, the only option is GPS collars. The alternative is, of course, if you can observe them constantly, but for large carnivores, that's basically impossible. And so we work here in the Tost study. That's our study area, and the study, it's situated in the southern part of Mongolia in the Gobi Desert. We've been here from 2008, and the study contains lots of different sub-studies. We're doing annual camera trap surveys and prey counts, disease ecology. There's many different parts, and one part is coloring snow leopards and ibex. And so far, we've put out about 50 colors. I don't remember the exact number on snow leopards. It's 32 different individuals, so several of them have been recaptured, and we've changed the color. So we are now actually more interested in catching the same cats and changing their colors so we can monitor them over a long time, or preferably throughout their lives. So for the paper here, we used data from 3 snow leopard mother and cub pairs. So as Sandro said, it's 2 females and 1 male cub. So not a lot, but at least something. And again, the cubs can only be captured in the second autumn, so say between September and November, because then they're big enough to wear a collar and they have not yet started separating from their mothers. So it's a very short time window when you can actually fit a collar to a snow leopard cub. So they will be about 1.5 years old at this time, a bit more. No, 1.5, I mean. And what we did then is we measured the distance between the the centroid of the mother's home range and the GPS locations to see if they were together or not, because the collars actually did not take locations at the same times throughout the study. And we also included birth dates for 7 litters that we've located in their dens. And just basic results, we found the median date of birth for snow leopards to be the 1st of June. And using the mean gestation time from zoos means that mating occurs on average on February 25, but from late January to late March. And the cubs here, they separated 21 or between 20 and 22 months of age. And the separation phase lasted basically from 1 to more than 7 months. So it's a pretty big difference. And if we plot the data here, so this is the male cub. I think you can see this point. The horizontal line here, that's the distance from the centroid to the border of the mother's home range. So any location above here means that they've been outside of the home range. And the red dots here, that's GPS locations from the mother, and blue are GPS locations from the cub. And here the cub separates from its mother. And then he stays within her home range for 28 days until he decides to just leave. Then he disperses to a different mountain range where he settles. So it's a very short separation phase for this cub. During it, he reunited with his mother once. They stayed together for 1 or 2 days, and then he left. And if we look at it on the map, you'll see our study area here. And in the lower part, that's the mother's home range. And when he decides to leave, he basically crosses the steppe and settles in Nemec Mountains. It's a very fast process. He does this trip in 2 nights. If we take a female in comparison, you have the same here, that you have the females, the border to her home range. The cub was actually captured before the mother here, and but she remains within the home range until she separates here at 20 months of age. Now, she goes out on several of these exploratory trips, and we monitored at least 5 of them until she drops her collar here. On the last time that she reunites with her mother has just given birth to a new litter, and the female stays with her at the den site for 4 or 5 days. So I think this shows that it's pretty scary to leave mom. She goes away and decides this is not really comfortable, comes back to her mother, stays with her for a few days, and then she goes out again and comes back to the mother. So if we plot her movements, she's doing a couple of these exploratory forays. She goes down south to the border between Mongolia and China. There's a fence there. And so it's 5 hours between these locations. Most likely she walked down to the border and followed it, and then decided to go up into the mom's home range again. I haven't, these are just examples, so I haven't plotted the last one. But if we look at how this compares to other large and medium-sized solitary cats, then we included 10 more species for which we could find data. And it's a very clear pattern that the bigger you are, the longer it takes for the offspring to develop enough to sustain themselves independently. So the shaded part here, that's the 95% confidence interval, and you'll see that all the cat species fit in there except for the snow leopard. It's a clear outlier. And despite being the smallest of the big cats, the cubs actually stay the longest of all of them. So even though tigers are so much bigger than snow leopards, tiger cubs do not stay with their mothers for as long as the snow leopards do. And if you think of it, here's a den site with 1 month old cubs. To they're probably not too much of a hassle. The female will have to move between the den and kill sites and so on. But at this time, they're not doing much. But here are the same cubs when they're 5 months old. And it's a short video. So you'll see they are terrorizing mom when she's trying to mark her territory, and they're just playing with each other, making noise. And now they will follow her for 22 months. So a single snow leopard needs to kill a large prey, like an ungulate ibex or similar, every 8th day. Well, that's what they do on average in Tost. But a female with cubs will need to kill more. And as the cubs grow, energy requirements will increase. We don't have any good data on this just yet, but maybe in the end they'll have to kill a large prey every 4 or 5 days. And providing so much food for 21 months must take a toll on the females. So snow leopard cubs ought to benefit more from this huge investment by the mother than other cat species. The question then is, of course, why? And we can't really say for sure. You could think that, well, of course, they have a fixed mating season, and so they're not probably, they can't be big enough to leave their mother at 1 year of age. And then if she keeps them for 2 years, she's not going to miss out any reproductive opportunities. Like, she can't get cubs earlier than that. But still, it makes no sense to keep the cubs and provide all this food unless there is a clear benefit from it. And what one can think is that in other cats, especially cheetah and tigers, they've demonstrated that the mother often brings back prey alive to the cubs and release them, and so the cubs can practice hunting and taking down the prey. And it ought to be very difficult for a snow leopard, because if you catch parties, they hunt bigger prey than the other cats. Most cat species, they hunt prey that's of the same size as themselves or smaller, but the prey that's available in snow leopard range is actually either the same size or bigger than the snow leopards. And if you catch a big ibex and release it in these steep slopes, it will probably be impossible for the cubs to catch it again. Now, I know that the herders in Mongolia, they told us a few times that in winter, sometimes snow leopard females come to their goats in daylight, even if the herder is close by. And they practice it. They say it seems as if they actually let the cubs practice hunting and killing their goats, which they thought they didn't really like that. And I can understand that. It's almost an insult that they let their cubs practice on their goats. But maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. When I told about it, it sounded a bit strange. But now that I've thought about it, maybe that's what they can do. They actually use the domestic goats as practice hunting. And they could be something else. We really don't know, but I would guess that the difficulties of hunting in the landscape and the fixed mating season is the two most likely explanations together. Now, what this means, if you look at large cats, or most large cats, or the general patterns, first is there's a large size difference between males and females. Like cougars and leopards a male can be twice the size as a female, whereas in snow leopards, the size difference is very small. And so infanticide is likely uncommon in snow leopards, because a male, as soon as the cubs are big enough to follow the female, it would be very risky for a snow leopard male to attack them, because the female is almost as big as him and she will defend them. It also means in other cats, females can actually start breeding as soon as they're old enough, so they can start breeding at 2.1 years or 1.8. But snow leopards can only breed at exactly 3 years or 4 years of age. And 3 years is likely the earliest, because they're almost 2 years old by the time they leave their mother. And then they have to disperse, find the home range of their own, settle down, and then wait for mating season. So they are actually together with their mother at the mating season when they should be mated to give birth at 2 years of age. So 3 or 4, that's most likely when they can give birth, which is later than other cats. Other cats can breed year round, but these have a strict mating season, which means that for other cats, a lost litter can be replaced rather quickly. But for snow leopards, they will have to wait until next mating season to replace the litter. And of course, cubs reach independence later in snow leopards than other cats. So if you take all this together, the late age of first reproduction, the late age when cubs are independent, and the fixed mating season, all this means that snow leopard populations are likely more vulnerable to reduced survival or reproduction than other large felids. And so if a snow leopard population decrease, it will take them longer to replenish the area than for another cat, which is pretty much what Sandro said in your study area. It took a very long time before you saw snow leopards again. So I think that's what I wanted to say. You can find the paper in the URL down here in the bottom of the slide. So please, if you have any questions.
Sandro, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Orjan, for this talk, which has taken us to a very interesting part of the world where your study area is located. I didn't know that you had caught so many snow leopards. I thought about half of them. You said 34 or so. Compliments, really compliments. I have trouble to have as many chamois and other European mammals with the same number.
I think we've figured them out a little bit, at least how to catch them. We still need to understand their ecology, but that part is.
Yeah, compliments. Yeah. I have several questions, but I prefer to leave the question space to the other people. I think there was one question. I saw it before. I have lost. Here. There is a question by Aliana Norris. Do you think if you had a larger sample size, would the differences between male and female cubs be the same? Males leaving quite quickly, a few times reuniting with mother, and females taking more time and reuniting often. And also there is another side question, if there are any papers published on the studies in Tost you mentioned about the disease ecology. So let's start with the first one. What would happen if you had the larger sample size?
Yeah, it's of course hard to say, but I think I'm pretty sure that we will not see a huge variation in when the age when they leave their mothers. That appears to happen in mating season in the second year, and they have to leave basically then if the mother is going to reproduce again. They can't stay once she starts denning, and I would think that the pattern would probably be pretty much the same. This is what you see in other cats too. Like if you think of it, there will be a territorial male here too, and he will not really like, once the male cub separates from its mother, it becomes a competitor with him. So he's not going to like that male cub to stay in the mother's home range, whereas the female cub that's just another female. So for the territorial male, he will most likely accept female cubs in a very different way than male cubs once they've reached independence. And perhaps the mother itself isn't as tolerant towards male cubs either. She wants them out. So I would think that we would see the same pattern, but I can't say for sure, of course. And yes, there are at least 2 papers published. They are on the Snow Leopard Network's bibliography, but maybe Gustav, I see Gustav is here. Maybe you could put the links in the chat to the disease papers.
Yeah, I'll dig them out, put them in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just a very quick question. Probably the answer is no, but have you ever realized any different attitude of the mother to the son in respect to the daughters? I mean, do they tend to treat sons differently? A very difficult question, I guess, because by radio tracking, it's difficult to tell. But.
Yeah, no, we've never seen. And I'm sure as long as they travel with their mother, I would assume that they treat them the same. The one thing we could tell was with this male I presented on, his mother had made a kill. She killed an ibex when he had left her, and then he reunited with her. But it was just one GPS location, and then he actually left and dispersed. And whereas the mother stayed at that kill for 3 more days, so there must have been lots of food there, and she did not let him share the meal. That's my interpretation, that because otherwise he would have stayed together with her and ate the ibex, and instead he dispersed. So I'm guessing that she was pretty convincing that he wasn't welcome anymore. But it's just a speculation. But we still have adult. We have a few cats where you have a female and her adult daughter, and the female has had new cubs. The adult daughter has had cubs, and they've all shared an ibex together. So they seem tolerant towards their daughters, even when they have, granddaughters, or what you would say. But we don't have any hard data.
Okay, thank you. There is another question by Claudio Augugliaro. If there is any evidence, or at least whether you think that the first mating could start earlier, December, or even earlier for females who do not have any cubs, that is females 3 years old or so.
Oh, yeah. No, we've never seen that, and I do not think it's like mating season is probably fixed. It's determined by the light, like sunlight, and so no, I think it's fixed. You can see even in zoos that they have mating season at the same time, and if the cats who are in the southern hemisphere, they have mating season, but in the opposite, so they mate in September, I guess it is. So no, I think it's fixed and it's determined by the light.
Another question by Luciano Azzeni. Has the recurring mother visiting behavior by females, I guess, been observed in any other mammal?
Ooh. I can't say for mammals. I do not think it's been at least published under other cats. Simply because it's so difficult you need to catch the mother and the offspring and have GPS collars on both of them if you want to document this. Earlier on when we had radio collars, it was too difficult because you'd have to go out and listen for them and pinpoint where each was and do that maybe several times per day. And so GPS collars are still fairly new. So no, I actually think in that sense our study is a little bit unique. There's not much published on this separation phase.
I may be wrong, but I think I read the paper on tigers where the female, the daughter, visited or at least tried to stay in the territory of the mother, and and then eventually moved out. But
yeah, yes.
I
No,
don't remember exactly the reference, but I think I read about it.
No, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's very much true, and I think that's common too. Like, so maybe the daughter inherits part of the mother's home range, so she settles down very next to her, and even inherits part of it. So yes, in that sense, they will probably meet and so on. But like a detailed study of how when they separate and how often they come back and stay. I haven't seen that, but yes, it's common that females accept their daughters, and yes, they must meet. So that's true. You're right.
Another question by Shuang Wanchok. What are your thoughts on how home range sizes may compare for snow leopards in Mongolia versus more rugged terrain, such as that in the Himalayas?
Yeah. Hard to say. Home range size will depend on many different things, but the data that we've seen, like from Nepal and Pakistan, where they have had GPS collars, it's very similar. It may be that they are bigger in Nepal, the home ranges, but it's not published, and I haven't seen any analysis, and it's not that much data either. But I can't say really. I would guess that they're similar, but there will be variation across. It's such a big range, but I can't say more than that.
Don't you think that prey density may determine range size? And the prey density in Tost, since it was sub-desertic or something like that, might be less abundant than in monsoonal Himalaya. I mean, I remember when I visited Manaslu, it was a kind of paradise. There were ungulates everywhere. And I can imagine that it must have been relatively easy for a snow leopard to catch a prey there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think with home ranges, like prey density can decrease the home range. If it's lots of prey, you can have a small home range.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Also the snow leopard population itself, like if there's few snow leopards, then you may want a bigger home range, so you can actually interact and for mating season find suitable mates. So I think it's prey density will dictate how small it can be, but then the snow leopard density will sort of dictate how large it has to be to actually meet other snow leopards. So it's complicated, and it's hard to. I could only guess, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's definitely complicated. I agree on that. Totally. Another question from Annelise Cabana. During your study, did you observe any female mating, even if it was still raising offspring?
No, we have never seen that. I know that in zoos, I mean, they have their cubs for 2 years in zoos too, but then they mate in like the year when the cubs are just 1 year old or half a year, but they do not produce any cubs, but they do mate. So perhaps that's a strategy to make sure the male do not kill the cubs or so. But it's hard to detect that in the wild. But we do actually see matings from our GPS collars when a male and a female is together for 3-4 days. We've never seen that with females who have cubs, but maybe it can happen. But that would be as a strategy to avoid infanticide, I think. They would not mate and produce cubs if they have young cubs.
There is a list of disease papers provided by Gustav to the person who was interested. And about questions, doesn't seem to be any other. Oh yeah, from Justin. If subadults are present, could the female mate?
Oh yes, definitely. They would most likely have their subadults or 1.5-year-old cubs with them, and then they will mate. So it's not the presence of cubs. It must be. Yeah, I don't know how it's governed. Maybe how long it was since they lactated or something like that. But in the cubs' first winter, I don't know if they mate or not. Maybe they do that sometimes, but they will not produce new cubs at least or give birth. So they're not in estrus. I'm getting into complicated. Maybe they are in estrus, but they don't get pregnant. I don't know exactly how it works. But they do not get cubs. If they have 6-month-old cubs or 8, whatever it could be, they will not produce new cubs that year.
You see, to answer all these questions, you should just catch some 30, 50 snow leopards, bring them to your lab, and raise them in captivity. Then you could control all the environmental variables.
Yeah.
Again, I have to ask a question which may not be answered, but have you ever witnessed any or guessed any case where the young helped the mother in killing a prey? Well, usually it's the mother who makes the kill and the young exploit, so to speak, the hunting of the mother. But when they are large cubs, you might expect them to participate or not.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I'm asking this question is that in Annapurna, many years ago, we found in the morning 2 baral killed a fully grown up male and a female. It was at the end of December. No, actually it was mid-January. And there were pug marks of a female with 2 cubs, large cubs, just a little bit smaller than the mother. And I wondered how a female could kill a large male, a large baral male, and a fully grown up female so easily, unless the cubs had not helped her. So that's the reason behind my question.
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't seen it. I think snow tracking is probably the best way to determine like what happened at the hunt, if you can piece it together. And we haven't been able to tell from the GPS collars, but we have 5 hours between the locations, so we miss all these fine details. And I've never seen it. I think they often hunt when it's dark. So I would guess that they could help her. I mean, yeah, in their second winter, when they're almost ready to leave, you would think that they would be able to help. But I have no data on it. But I would be surprised if they can't be completely useless, because then they can't sustain themselves on their own. So yeah, why not? It would make sense.
And also I have another comment about the duration of the stay of the cubs with the mother. This is just anecdotal, but it might be even longer elsewhere than 2 years, perhaps. I say that because in Sagarmatha National Park, we got pictures, and a close collaborator of mine who was a very good observer from Nepal, made the direct observations and took the pictures. For 2 years, in the same season, which I think it was November, he took pictures of a mother with 4 large cubs. And in the second year, again, there was a female with 4 large cubs in the same month. So I wonder whether in a few cases, perhaps cubs might stay even 3 years with the mother, especially if the mother has made a great reproductive effort with 4 cubs, making 4 cubs surviving.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, because as you say, if she has 4 cubs and they manage to grow that through 2 years, maybe it would be worth keeping them 1 more year just to make sure that they, or increase their survival chances. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we know so little about them, and it is a harsh landscape they live in. So it could very well be. Could also, maybe she did mate, but the pregnancy got terminated or something, and then she kept them, or hard to say. But it's interesting. We may have to write a new paper on this a couple of years later.
There is a longish comment by Gustav, which says that lynx stand out a bit too in your diagram of size and age of separation, and that the young separate a bit earlier than expected. And the lynx also have a fixed breeding seasons. Do you think they try to squeeze out 1 extra litter to be able to breed every year? Lynx are interesting too in that they kill very large prey, reindeer, but maybe that they have evolved to kill roe deer that are more equal to their own size. Impossible to know, but it would be interesting to hear your opinion.
Right, no, that's true. Yeah, with the slightly shorter, it's true that the lynx have a slightly shorter age when the cubs reach independence than you would expect, and I think that's true. The lynx cubs, if the lynx would have kept the cubs or kittens for another full year, most likely the survival wouldn't have been that much higher. So that wouldn't be, how do you say, that strategy would be less favorable than letting them go after 9-10 months. Even if survival is slightly lower, the female can produce new cubs, and so the net output will be higher by doing this. So yes, I think so. I agree that they probably try to squeeze out an extra litter. And with the reindeer, yeah, it's they do kill large prey, but I was a bit too quick there. So I think the thing, when a cat has a lot of different prey to choose from, they will select prey that is smaller than themselves or equal in their size. So with the lynx, they have basically only reindeer. So I guess they have no choice there. And I'm not sure which. I think they go for the smallest ones most often, of the reindeer at least. But yes, they do kill large prey. Maybe reindeer are easier to catch. I don't know.
There is a question by Lingjin Xiao. Is it possible that the male offspring would share the home range of the mother when food is really abundant?
I don't think it's about food, actually. I think it's about it's almost, how do you say, they're programmed like to avoid inbreeding and all this. Like the mother will not want her son to be there when he becomes sexually mature, because then he could be the territorial male that she will mate with. And also the territorial male will not want any other adult males in his territory. Like he could, he'll fight him and kill him if he doesn't leave. So yeah, of course, with lots of food, they could have smaller home ranges, but it's I can't say it's impossible, but it's the social organization wouldn't really favor such an idea. But perhaps it happens now and then, but it wouldn't be the common thing.
So you think you'd rate the snow leopard as a territorial species on the basis of what you said? I wonder whether it is really so, or it may be different in different areas. Because I remember in Annapurna, Joe Fox told me that at least 6 different leopards were attending the same area, which was not a very huge area. So in that case, territoriality probably is absent. I mean, this relates a bit to your paper I mentioned before, published in Ecosphere.
Yeah, well, I can't say what it's like throughout the range. Of course, they are territorial where we work, but of course, yes, it can change, and territoriality will depend on food abundance and all these things. What is the most favorable strategy? But I think the terrain itself, like with these, especially in the Himalayas with high peaks and valleys, these things will direct their movements, and so you'll probably find places where they do meet. And I mean, we have in Tost, when we trap, we put out snares in very small areas. It's maybe a radius of 2 kilometers, but we can still catch 4 cats in 4 weeks. And so, of course, often we try to find the borders between territories, because that's where they mark the most, because they have to mark it, like, this is my place. So you can be lucky and catch both the territorial males that have the border there, and maybe you have 2 females that border there too. And then there's a younger cat walking past who happens to be trapped. So I think even if they are territorial, you can find these places where they borders meet and things, and that's where they will mark the most. So that's where we will put out our cameras or try to collect. I mean, we'll find all the scrapes there, but maybe even in Himalayas, it could be that it's a different social system because of the peaks and valleys. I can't say.
Yeah.
Have to get back.
We are asking questions to you which are difficult to answer, because the questions are simple, but it's the answers which are difficult because data are not there. I mean, there is so much to discover yet. The next question is, I find it particularly interesting because it is related to climatic changes, and it's from Helena Edelson. Has anyone observed the dispersal pattern differences due to climatic changes, or perhaps there is not yet enough data over time to detect it?
There's no published information on dispersal patterns at all, actually, in snow leopards. Like I think we have. I think we have 4 dispersing snow leopards, but it's not published. And as far as I know, that's the only data there is. So, I mean, yes, there is, of course, maybe you can look at cameras and you find a young cat here and then you find it over here. And so you can say it moved that distance, but how it dispersed is, you will not get from cameras. And so, yeah, we haven't described the dispersal process yet. So looking at climate change will probably never happen, I would almost say. Maybe, but that would be very, very far away in time.
Yeah, that's possible, but I will not be so pessimistic, if you allow me. Because the climatic change is changing quite rapidly the distribution and the abundance of food resources for herbivores. Some areas in the world where there are long winters, now snowy winters, now have more rainy winters, which is good for vegetation. Other areas which had rainy winters or little snow now are very dry. So the vegetation has to change according to the climatic change, the local climatic change. If the herbivores change their distribution pattern, then the carnivores will have to change, at least in part, theirs. And the first part is already occurring. So you could expect maybe in some 20 years, 15 years, 20 years, to detect also some change in the biology of carnivores, especially those living in mountains, because of course mountains are extreme environments and strongly seasonal, and they are the first to resent of the climatic change.
No, that's true. Sorry, I think I got stuck on the dispersal, but yes, I mean, absolutely. If looking at distribution or movements or how populations maybe, disperse or cross or movements within populations, absolutely, I agree. I think I got stuck on the dispersal process thing. Sorry.
You have dispersed during the dispersal process.
Yeah.
Justin is asking about your next plans, whether you can tell us why the team is following the same snow leopards over time.
Oh yeah, right. So part of what we are really interested in is demography and understanding how old snow leopards, like what's their, how old do they get? When do they start getting? When do females start reproducing? What's the time interval between litters and how many cubs are there usually in a litter? And all these basic understanding for population models. And to do that, we need to follow individual snow leopards, preferably throughout their lives. And then we can also see where, if we catch their offspring, where do they settle, and just trying to understand the population. So that's why we are interested in following the same snow leopards. Of course, I mean, new snow leopards are also interesting, but it's actually easier to catch new ones compared to targeting that individual. So that's why we're focusing on them. And then we're happy for all that we catch. We're also coloring ibex, which is a nice addition. So we're going to try to understand habitat selection in detail, both of the ibex, but also from the snow leopard's perspective, because I think the ibex governs a lot of. Ibex is the main prey in Tost. So where the prey is will likely determine how the snow leopards use their habitat. I think we're hoping to develop our disease studies, but yeah, there's lots of plans. But those are, we're gonna try to start a more detailed study on predation too, like both livestock predation and how they select their prey.
Well, have a good luck, and I hope that the future work you will be doing will be as successful as the one you have led in the past.
Thank you.
It was a high time that some sound information based on fair samples could be provided about the snow leopard, who seems to be really one of a kind, because it's different from the other cats on more than one aspect.
I completely agree. They are different.
Different, yeah. Besides being very handsome, of course.
Yes, that too.
Okay, I think it's noon, so I guess we have to finish with some regret. But maybe there will be another opportunity. And thank you very much to everybody, especially to Orjan, Justin, Raki, and all other people who have participated. Bye, everybody. Ciao.
Thank you, Sandro and Orjan. Thank you, everyone.